Welcome back to POMpod, the Peace of Mind podcast. As we wrap up the year, a lot of us are doing that familiar end-of-year mental inventory. What worked? What didn't? What we want to do differently next year. And estate planning almost never makes that list. Not because it isn't important, but because it feels uncomfortable, overwhelming, or like something we'll get to eventually. So today's episode is a little different. I want to share some real-world estate planning wins and lessons from this past year. Everything I'm talking about is anonymous, but these are real situations, real families, and very real outcomes. This isn't about fear. It's about what planning actually does when life happens. If you've been thinking, I know I should deal with this at some point, this episode is for you. From my seat as an estate planning attorney, 2025 looked like a mix of first-time planners, people updating documents they hadn't looked at in years, and families dealing with situations they never expected to be dealing with. Some clients came in proactively, others came in because something had already gone wrong, or almost had. But the most common emotion I saw this year wasn't panic, it was relief, often paired with regret. Relief that they were finally handling it. Regret that they hadn't done it sooner. And over again, I was reminded that estate planning is rarely about money. It's about control, it's about clarity, and it's about protecting the people you love during moments when they're already stretched thin. Let's start with the wins, because there were many. Win number 1, medical documents that spoke when someone couldn't. In more than one situation this year, a client became incapacitated unexpectedly. No warning, no time to get things in order, but they had a medical power of attorney and a HIPAA authorization in place. That meant doctors knew exactly who could make decisions, loved ones weren't arguing in the hallway, and the person the client trusted was able to step in immediately. One family told me afterward that having those documents didn't make the situation easier, but it made it manageable. That's what good planning does. It gives people confidence when everything else feels uncertain. Win number 2, clear roles prevented family fallout. Another win I saw this year came from clarity around roles. Who's in charge of what? Executor, trustee, backup decision makers. Because these roles were clearly defined, there was no scrambling, no guessing, no second guessing. Everyone knew their lane. And in emotionally charged moments, that kind of clarity can be the difference between family members pulling together or pulling apart. One of the biggest gifts you can give the people you love is not making them guess what you would have wanted. Win number 3, protecting chosen family. Some of the most meaningful wins this year involved LGBTQ+ clients and chosen families. Partners, close friends, non-biological parents, people who matter deeply but wouldn't have been recognized by default under the law. Because they planned, their families were protected the way they intended. Their relationships were affirmed, their wishes were honored. Without that planning, the law would have stepped in. And the law doesn't know your family unless you tell it. Now let's talk about the lessons, because these are just as important. Lesson number 1. I have something is not the same as I'm covered. A very common situation this year was someone saying, I have documents, I think. And when we looked closer, those documents were outdated, incomplete, or no longer accepted by banks or hospitals. Sometimes they were created online. Sometimes they were 15 or 20 years old. Sometimes they were missing entirely. Partial planning creates a false sense of security. And unfortunately, the moment you find that out is often the worst possible moment. Lesson number 2. Life changed. The plan didn't. Another recurring issue was plans that hadn't kept up with life. Divorces, estrangements, deaths, new relationships. Old agents were still legally in charge. People who hadn't spoken in years still had authority. And while we could usually fix the legal problem, the emotional fallout was often much harder. Estate plans aren't one and done. They need to evolve as your life evolves. Lesson number 3, waiting for the right time. Finally, one of the hardest lessons this year was what happened when people waited. They waited for more time, more money, less stress. And then an illness or death forced decisions to be made quickly by people who didn't feel ready or equipped. The best time to plan is long before there's urgency. Every win and every lesson this year shared something in common. The people who planned weren't more organized. They weren't braver. They weren't wealthier. They just started. And that decision to get clarity made all the difference. Estate planning doesn't prevent hard moments, but it absolutely softens them. As we head into a new year, I want to say this clearly. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to know all the answers. You just have to start. A peace of mind planning session isn't about pressure or perfection. It's about understanding your options and reducing overwhelm. And if you already have documents, reviewing them is just as important as creating them in the first place. If this episode stirred something in you, that's not fear, it's awareness. And awareness is a powerful place to begin. Estate planning is an act of care for yourself and for the people who love you. Peace of mind is built one decision at a time. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.